welcome to Cardcore Gamer. This is one in a series of videos about board games. In this video I'd like to talk about theme and mechanics. Put simply, theme is what a board game is about, and the mechanics are how the board game works. Now I'm going to use a fairly universal example, something which most people are going to have played. It's a very old game, although not many people know that. The game is Snakes and Ladders. Now for anybody who hasn't played it, I'm assuming most people have, here's a quick introduction to the game and how it works. The board is a track numbered from 1 to 100. You roll the dice and move that number of squares along the board. If you land on the foot of a ladder, you move up to the top. Conversely, if you land on the head of a snake, you move down to the tip of its tail. The winner is the first person to make it to the square numbered 100. So as you can see, Snakes and Ladders contains one main mechanic, roll and move. You roll a dice, you count the number on the dice, you move that many squares on the board. Roll and move is basically a completely random thing. There is no control over the game. You have no skill involved whatsoever. So how does this manage to meet up with the theme? Well, originally, back in ancient India where the game came from, the theme was about life and about where you would end up after life. So at the bottom of the board you have reincarnation, and at the top you have enlightenment, and on your way along the board the bottoms of the ladders would be marked with a virtue and the tops of the snakes would be marked with a vice. So obviously the whole thing was a moral game. When this game came over to England, most of that theme was just stripped away. It was about 1890 so, and the game just became a game of racing to the end, going up the ladders, going down the snakes. The religious theme, apart from a bit of a subtext with the snakes, just evaporated. There was nothing there. So now you've got a mechanic where you're racing, but that doesn't really make sense. You don't race against somebody else at a random speed each moment to moment. You're not in an Olympic event where you're going to run against somebody else and then occasionally slow down and speed up just on a whim. So the mechanic and the theme don't really work. Also, with the snakes and the ladders just being abstract, not really representing much, your theme's pretty much out the window. So in the 1940s, Milton Bradley took this game to America. They called it Chutes and Ladders, and they themed it around playground equipment. They decided it was going to be a kids' game, and it makes perfect sense. You climb up a ladder, you slide down the slide. There's your theme. Again, the racing element still doesn't mean a lot, because why would you go slower than a 6 every turn? But at least the theme came back slightly. So you can kind of see where it is that theme and mechanics meet in a game. This is Formula D. It's a roll and move game with a Formula 1 theme. Just like in Snakes and Ladders, you roll the dice, check the number, and then move your playing piece a number of squares equal to that number. The main difference is that in Formula D, you get a handful of different types of dice. These represent the gearbox of your racing car. The lowest dice will move you 1 to 2 squares, and the highest dice, or highest gear, moves you 21 to 30 squares. This is a perfect example of the mechanics of a game supporting the theme. Referring back to my last video for a while, we had two broad umbrella terms. We had Euro games and Ameritrash. Okay, so how does theme and mechanics relate to these? Well, Eurogaming, we're talking more specifically about German games. There's a German style of design that was quite popular in late 1970s, early 1980s, and remains so to this day. But that was not exactly its genesis, but that was when there was a real boom. Germany produces a lot of board games, and the German style of games certainly do tend to favour mechanics over theme. It's not to say the themes are just slapped on top, but they're not as involved as they are with the American games. So, the German games are kind of typified by themes of growth, and of progress, and of building, and of creating. You tend to find that their themes, on the surface, they might seem kind of dull. You have games like Power Grid, which is about managing the power output to give electricity to all the homes in Germany, or like Agricola, which is about farming in the 1700s. They don't sound particularly inspiring to start with, but the game designs, the actual mechanics of the games, very, very smart. They tend to be simple, easy to pick up, not too much in the way of rules, very little randomness, so the winner is the person who actually plays the best. Now, your big problem tends to be that if a game is too heavy on the mechanics and not so heavy on the theme, it could have any theme and that wouldn't matter. Also, if a game gets too mechanically heavy, you feel like the game is playing you. You feel like you're just doing things because the game tells you to. And it seems like there really isn't any decision making anymore, you're just having to follow a certain pattern. Now this doesn't typify the Euro games at all. There are plenty of fine Euro games out there. But the best ones are where the theme doesn't infringe on the mechanics, and the mechanics are clever but not too burdensome. So let's contrast this with the American games, the Ameritrash stuff. These are all about theme. These tend to tell a story. You'll play them, you'll finish, and you'll be sat there afterwards talking about, oh, when I did this, or when this happened, when that happened. They tend to contain a lot of what's called flavour text, which is, descriptive stuff on the cards that explains what's going in terms of the theme or the story. Now, mechanically, they can be a lot weaker. They tend to involve a lot more randomness, a lot more dice throwing. Some people feel that Ameritrash games are inferior because if you roll a dice and you win the game on a dice roll, you may have rolled that dice at the start and it would have been the same result. But what they're missing there is the story that gets told through play. I do actually tend to favour these games myself because I like that storytelling element. So on the one hand, while Euro games do tend to be mechanically stronger and thematically more diverse, Ameritrash games can be mechanically weaker, but they tend to have a richness and depth of theme. The important point is where theme and mechanics mesh, where they meet up. So what I'm going to show you now is one type of game done in two different styles, so you can get more of an idea of what I mean. What we see here is Mission Red Planet. This is a game with a theme of colonising Mars. The chief mechanic is one known as area control or area influence. The map's divided up into sections, and the person with the most counters of their colour in that area has control of the area and scores points. The thing with Mission Red Planet is while the theme is a fun one, you're taking these little wooden discs representing astronauts, you're loading them onto spaceships and sending them off to Mars. Really, those wooden discs and the spaceships could represent anything. I mean, there could be units of cargo, putting them onto boats and sending them off, or there could be settlers going off to colonise a new world. The theme and the mechanics aren't that closely related. Here we have Chaos in the Old World. This is a game themed around 4 warring Chaos gods. Again, it's area control, so you want to place the most of your colour of playing pieces into the map to control a region and score points. This time round there's also a healthy amount of dice combat as well. Unlike Mission Red Planet, in which all 4 players are given an exact same set of pieces at the start of the game, Chaos in the Old World has ways in which the mechanics and theme are inextricably linked. If you have a look at this picture of the playing pieces, notice how they're all a different number of each component. In the bottom right you have the red playing pieces. These belong to the god of war, Khorne. Now, he has the largest number of the middle-sized pieces. Those are the demons. So it makes perfect sense. The god of war has the most fighting units. Directly above, you'll see the blue playing pieces belonging to the god Tzeentch. He's a lot more insidious, and as you can see, he only has 3 demons, so is much weaker at fighting, but has a huge wealth of the cultists. These are the smaller units that will influence the map rather than influence fights. The theme is also helped by the sculpts of the playing pieces being unique to each individual god. Well, that pretty much wraps up theme and mechanics. If you have any questions or comments or constructive criticism, please feel free to post in the comments section below. All that remains to be said is that I hope this video was useful to you, and thanks for watching.